Thank you very much. Greetings to our Executive Director, to Architect Alberto Marquina, and also to our Executive Director and the representatives of the Ministry of External Affairs, Mr. Jaime Caucho Soisa, representatives of the UKDT, Mrs. Kate Flint, that is the director of the program, Mr. David Kenna, that is the leader of procurement. Well, in effect, currently, in this occasion, we are going to have the presentation of the technical scopes of this invite. And just to be able to remind some key data, it is important to mention that one of the events that most harm has caused to Peru is the Niño phenomenon. The Niño phenomenon, as it has been stated at the beginning, generates thousands and millions of dollars in loss when this event occurs. And this does not only apply a process of reconstruction in reference to all of the infrastructure, but also human loss that generates this. And it is important to be able to carry out this reconstruction process, but it is not enough. And beside this, we require the implementation of preventive measures of this in reference to these damages. And it is important to establish that currently we are going to present 4 projects. 2 for pluvial drainage in the case located in the region of Tumbes and Piura, Paita specifically speaking, and 2 river defenses located in the region of Lambayeque, Cajamarca, which is the Chancay River, and also in the region of Lima, which is the Rimac River. These 4 projects together represent around 520 kilometers between river defenses in reference to primary, secondary, and around 400 structures in reference to what needs to be designed to be able to be developed and what is affected. And the investment amount that this is going to mean overcomes the 2 billion soles. Here we see the need in reference to us being able to have companies that are able to design these projects in order for us to be able to get the objectives that we need, which basically it's about prevent the risk of floods in these years. In the following slide, we are going to present the proposal of fluvial drainages from Tumbes and Paita, and also to be able to have clarity, we've structured this in these 5 items in reference to the portfolio of interventions, the scope of the design service, and also to be able to provide this in consideration, and also in urban drainage in the city of Taipa. Next one. As we already established the portfolio, we have 2 projects for fluvial drainage in reference to the Niño phenomenon, and also in reference to the fact of there occurring precipitations in reference to what can cause floods and generated disasters that we all know. We've been able to formulate 2 different investment projects with the unique codes being mentioned here for Tumbes and Piura, and we can have access to this in a public manner in the webpage of the Ministry of Economy that is mentioned in this. And considering these matters, we are considering this in reference to being able to establish those that are interested can have access to this information. Here we're going to put the information of the design service. Here we've summarized in 3 key aspects in reference to being established and take this into consideration. The first point, and that the design takes as reference the pre-investment study that is viable for each drainage. And here we've been able to establish a technical base, a study that should be considered to be able to develop these designs. And also, as part of the design, what we expect in reference to these strategic matters to be able to develop the whole drainage system and river defenses in reference to topography, geotechnia, and other studies of specialties that allow us to be able to carry this out. Now, based on this information, what we are waiting for at the third point is to be able to develop the modeling hydraulic and hydrological ones that allow us to be able to have a first approximation of the designs and allow us to be able to resolve this problematic of floods. These modelings, both hydraulic and hydrological, especially hydraulic, should be developed first without a project to see what are the affected areas, and based on that modeling, this is to be able to establish measures that consider this with a project that is able to establish that we are actually carrying out and solving the issues. And considering this aspect, it is natural that we find different parts, such as a connection of waters, sewage, electrical connections, phone, gas, etc., a whole range of public services that are being developed in the city, and this item requires a special treatment. And that is why we should always have an important attention paid on the treatment of interferences, and for this not to have any interference when the execution of the work, and for this to be done in the easiest way possible. Another key aspect that we need to consider is the land identification. What are we making reference to? To be able to establish these pieces of land that can definitely have an effect in reference to this, and there is the need of acquiring them in reference to being able to establish this. Here we need the correct location of lands that are indispensable to be able to get to the purpose. Now, something that is not minor is social management. Given that the urban areas in the cities, as those that are understood and we are well aware of, the city has its own dynamics of functioning. It has its own social actions, its own life. Basically, the idea is that from the social part, there is work that is being done in a rigorous manner so that what is designed does not affect or has the least effect possible towards the community in reference to social acceptance, not only for design, but also for the programming of work, so that this can definitely facilitate the execution of the project. Now, what is critical is in reference to being able to obtain permits, certifications. If we don't have the environmental certifications, we are unable to execute the project. But we have the permits that are required in reference to being able to develop this, and we're able to execute this. And if there is the presence of archaeological patrimony, then we also need to implement the necessary measures to be able to specify these actions. Now, in this case, certification and everything in reference to social matters and archaeological matters, all of them also have to be duly that the design itself is an effective design. And this means in reference to the criteria, it's for us to be a multi-criterial analysis in reference to what is described in this comprehensive analysis of many criteria and simultaneously, and to be able to base the engineering measures that are applicable or implementable. And on this base, we require a social analysis that allows us to be able to show that the solution, the engineering solution that we are setting, is the most suitable one according to the standards of INVIERTE-PE in reference to a level of social profitability. And based on these analysis, once we have the approval of this criteria, we are able to carry out the engineering, which is basically the development of infrastructure. And also here we're using the use of the RIBA methodology, which is basically in reference to the architects of the United Kingdom, was a suggestion that we are establishing, but it is also open to see the possibility of setting another methodology. Next one, I'm going to now mention some aspects, some complementary aspects that are required to be put into consideration. In effect, yes, beside the criteria that has been stated a minute ago, an expectation that we have, and like it has already been mentioned previously, what we are looking to have is to have interventions that are sustainable economically, socially, and environmentally speaking. To be able to get this purpose, what we do want is to pass from the conventional designs that we normally have on hand, which are great infrastructure designs, and basically here to be able to pass to structures that are integrated in the city. For example, as we see in the upper part of the screen, for us to be able to have some drainage systems that have an architectonic treatment that's landscaped, that makes the population identify with these structures, and in reference to being able to have an opportunity to be able to develop the city better. And in a certain way, we're looking to have one design in the architectonic part in reference to these kind of measures for us to be able to get the sustainability of what we are discussing. What we want is to have innovation, to want to incorporate these measures to be able to have these systems be sustainable and admirable with the cities and the people. I'm now going to give a detail in reference to a more extensive part of the drainage of Tumbes. We've stated the objective of the case of the project of Tumbes and drainages in general is that the population of the city of Tumbes and Corrales located in the province of Tumbes are able to have suitable access to drainage services. In summary, for them to be able to have drainage services that actually work. And considering this in reference to the following slide, please, the previous one. These projects are located in the region of Tumbes, which is a border region with Ecuador. And here, in reference to being able to establish this for Tumbes and Corrales. Next one, please. Within the main objectives that are set for these projects, in the case of Tumbes, we are talking about an approximate of 152 hectares. And we need the evacuation of around 73 cubic meters per second. We are setting main structures to be able to get to this purpose, and these are organized in structures of recollection of fluvial waters, transportation, the storage in some cases of these, and also the evacuations of waters. And what we are establishing as a pre-investment part is around 62 kilometers in networks and transportation structures to be able to get 28 cubic meters and around 170 hydraulic stations that are going to be complemented to be able to get to the purpose and the objective. The main stretches where we have been able to identify the interventions are located in Castilla, Tumbes Avenue, Ficus, Salamanca, Tarapacá, urbanization of Robles, Pedregal, Querry, Pampa Grande, and Puente Nuevo. These are some references in reference to the project. In the case of Paita, next one, please. Or sorry, in the case of Tumbes, the investment amount for the projects is in the order of 310 million. Given the magnitude of investments that is established and that needs to be done, it is necessary that the designs are quite safe and that they allow this investment to be able to meet the objective. Next one, we have the urban drainage for Paita. In the case of Paita, here this is being located in Piura. The objective of this project, next one please. The objective is like it was said in a previous case to Tumbes, the population needs to have access to this service. In the case of Paita, for those of you that aren't aware, this is a population that has two very well-defined levels, a low part that is basically close to the ocean, and a high part, which is the one that also evacuates towards the lower part, and that finally these two levels that are like two terraces are able to be treated in an integrated manner. In this case, the project has the main objectives that we currently have for Paita. Additionally, in reference to the structures of recollection, transportation, in reference to this, these are very similar to Tumbes, and they are of 34 kilometers in the transportation networks of evacuation. And we're also able to see that there are around 53 hydraulic stations. But something that is complementary in reference to the case of Paita is in reference to what I was stating. This was separated in the high part and the low part, and it is put together in reference to a slope. This slope is of approximately 36 hectares, which requires treatment to be able to stabilize this. In the case of Paita, we have these parts that are being prioritized, and here in the following stage, please. We have a project in reference to 586 million soles that, like I said, require a rigorous design in order for this to be shared without any issue. Now, we are going to share the river defenses of the Chancay rivers located in Lambayeque, Cajamarca, and the Rimac River. In reference to this, we have something very similar to the previous part, and we're going to develop the part of interventions, how these river defenses are incorporated in reference to this integrated focus, and also finally a scope of both projects. Okay, next one, please. Again, this is basically just going to be to specify in the case of Lambayeque, this is a component that is being established by 3 investment projects in reference to being able to establish this. And like it was said a minute ago, this can provide access to all of the information of the pre-investment study through the link that is in the interior part of here. And there will not be any more restriction to be able to provide this information that is free and public. And here again, the following one, please. Next one. Here, considering these aspects, these are all focused within this part has to do with the component of integrated solutions. Integrated solutions in reference to the floods in the rivers. These are all formed by 3 components. In the lower left part, we have included the river defenses, and this is actually used to be able to consider this of the rivers. And in reference to this analysis, given the capacity of the flow of water in the lower part, in the middle high part, we are able to consider in reference to these dams to be able to consider these parts. And finally, the component of natural infrastructure, which includes the reforestation, to be able to stabilize this and complement it in reference to being able to establish this in reference to these signals, to be able to have the vulnerable population, to be able to state the measures. Next one, please. This is a schematic way of showing these components that I've just mentioned. Component A, which includes river defenses components, the dams, and components C, natural infrastructure, reforestation, soil conservation, terraces, and early warning systems. And here, considering this aspect in reference to the river defenses that are established. Very similar to what was mentioned for the drainage systems. In the case of river defenses, as it is being mentioned, the river defenses are being in place both in urban and rural areas. And For that reason, we are also establishing that we are able to pass from conventional designs, which were basically rigid structures, to be able to pass to sustainable designs. And when we talk about sustainable designs here, in this case, what we also expect is that in the case or in the cases in which the river defenses are being in place in reference to the urban areas, these are able to be integrated as well in the rural area, and not only with the natural landscaping, but also with possibilities of access to archaeological patrimonies, and to be able to be consider the different resources that the population has throughout the design. In the urban area, the population accesses to the river, and what we need is river defenses to be able to consider these accesses for animals to be able to drink water, to be able to carry out their normal activities, and there are other kind of activities that require structures to have and consider this kind of decisions. It is about considering these hydraulic parts that are allowing us to have these structures have a functionality that is different, and to be able to have this value and to look after in order for these structures to be able to meet the objectives of being sustainable, economic, and environmental. Okay, next one, please. Next slide, to be able to present in reference to these focuses that we had established and in different scenarios, both in the maximum parts have to do every certain time for formal ends that we are showing in reference to the graphs on the right, and in times where we're seeing that it's an average flow, or in situations of maximums comes and goes. The maximum river defenses are established, are able to be integrated in these different hydric resources, and to be able to connect to the cities. Thank you. Once again, please. In the case of the Chancay River, yes, hold on, next one, please. In the Chancay River, in a summarized manner, what is being required is that the population located in the river defense has protection for floods. And in this case, this is considering the cases of Monsefu, Patapo, Pomalca, Pucalá, Reque, Saña, Uman, Llama, Ferrañafe, Manuel Antonio Mesones, and the population that is located in this area, in order to be able to get the protection of their lives and the goods that are located in reference to all of these areas in the river. Next one, please. This project is also focused on the northern part of the country, in the region of Lambayeque, and as we said, the basin of the Chancay River also forms part of the region of Cajamarca, and it would state the two districts that are included in the scope of this project. Next one, please. In the case of Chancay, we have been able to prioritize 4 stretches in the Chancay River that are including 65 kilometers, 12 areas, and 3 dikes. And considering what was established, next one, please. What we are establishing here is the design of around 65 kilometers of dikes of focus in reference to these 3 dikes in areas, in reference to the exceeding flows. And in the Chancay River, we have a variation between 900 to over 2,000 cubic meters. There is an important part to be able to have all of this met in the objective that is desired. There is something that we want, and which is the expectation, which is that the design is able to take advantage of these potentials, which in a certain case, in reference to the defenses, is able to have this integration with landscaping, not only with the urban area, but also with the rural area, in order to have these evaluated by the population and to be able to integrate this solution. And what is important here is that we are able to establish this in this use, in this multi-purpose part of this defense is considering the intangibility of the marginal belt to be able to provide stability and sustainability to these areas, specifically speaking. Next one, please. In the case of Chancay, well, as we know, this is formed by 3 projects, and the accumulated amount of investment is going to represent 470 million soles, from which here the need of also being able to have designs that are quite rigorous, solid, that allow us to be able to meet the objectives and that this investment is actually well executed. Next one, please. We are now going to briefly describe the scope of the Rimac River. The Rimac River is located, next one. The Rio Rimac River is located in the region of Lima, and the objective is to be able to reduce the risk in reference to floods and fluvial erosion in the productive units, public and services in the population located around this river. In the case of the Rimac River, we have been able to develop basically this in 3 provinces of Lima. In Callao, which is the one that is basically located next to the ocean. It is the area where we have the discharge of the river, the area of Lima itself, and Huarochirí, which is the high part. We've been able to identify 15 districts that were attended from the part of Callao, Carmen de la Legua, in San Bartolomé, San Mateo, Santa Cruz de Cochacra, Santa Eulalia, Ate, Chaclacayo, El Angostino, Lima, Rimac, Lurigancho, San Juan de Lurigancho, and San Martín de Porres. This is a quite extensive displacement. This is one of the projects that we are going through the capital of Peru, and that in the same way we are able to use to avoid disasters and flooding. Very good. Next one, please. Here we've been able to identify 11 stretches throughout the emplacement that I've mentioned. And what we expect here in reference to this, we have different areas that have been identified in reference to pre-investment. The next one, please. In this project, what we are trying to have is to have around 60 kilometers in river defenses of different typologies. Here we are mentioning some typical sectors in reference to what can be implemented in reference to the proposal established in viable studies, both for dikes, armed concrete, which are proposals of sections in reference to being able to establish the development of the river in areas where there is a very little availability of land, given the restriction that is established to be able to set the river. And here, considering the different criteria that are established in what is considered to be a part of the contract and what can be subscribed for this. Next one, please. Here, in the case of the previous part, we are establishing the development of this can be integrated into the city, and this can also contribute to the intangibility and definition of the marginal belt to be able to determine why these areas are seen affected. Next one, please. And finally, here to establish that this project is quite ambitious. It has an estimated budget of 1.1 billion soles, and again, due to the level of investment, we do require for this projects to have rigorosity in their design, and also as a thank to all of the people that are participating in this event and that are, of course, interested in making their proposals to be able to get to these results. Thank you very much.